Hi, this is Abhinavardhan and we are here at KubeCon in San Diego, and today we have with us Steven Mih. You are CEO of Alluxio. First of all, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Swapnil. Great to be here.
If you look at data lakes and Kubernetes space, can you talk a bit about the challenges that the ecosystem faces when it comes to data?
Yeah, so data lakes are typically outside of Kubernetes clusters. And so while Kubernetes clusters, they orchestrate the compute, getting access to the data still remains a challenge. And that's where Alluxio comes in. So we provide the data access and data locality for the compute frameworks you run with Kubernetes, making it much higher performance and also much more elastic.
How would you define data lake?
Yeah, data lake is, you could have a data lake that has most of your data in it. That can be a storage system like HDFS. It could also be an S3 bucket, so it can be an object store. And data lakes are now part of the disaggregated analytics and AI stack.
We are generating a huge amount of data every day. Most of the data has value, some data doesn't have value. And as the data is growing exponentially, what is the big challenge for data lake?
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's a couple things. Number one is that there isn't any one data lake anymore. So there's probably multiple, depending on what type of strategy a company has. They could have an on-prem data lake and they could have cloud data lakes. And if they have a multi-cloud strategy, they might have more than one data store. And typically within a lake, there's different formats of the same data that is used in slightly different ways. This causes a lot of challenges around managing all the different data lakes. The other aspect of data lakes, the format of the data may be different than what your compute frameworks need. And so these weren't actually designed for analytics and AI workloads. They're really for backup and storage, and they're a very low cost place to put all this data. And so we looked at the problem and said, well, as you said, Swapnil, not all the data is actually relevant. In fact, studies show that less than 4% of your petabytes of data may be actually relevant to you. And so what we saw is an opportunity to take the data and say, let's just get the hot data and make that available to the compute frameworks. And so Alluxio brings the data from any data storage and then bring it to compute frameworks to give locality. And if you look at it from a Kubernetes standpoint, that brings locality to the Kubernetes compute containers.
As the use case of Kubernetes is growing, a lot of new companies are coming in. They're working their own workloads there.
Yes.
How does that create either a challenge or opportunity for Alluxio?
So most of the workloads have been focused on operational workloads that are really for databases and for your tier 3 applications that have now been turned into microservices and containerized environments. But as there is the data challenge and as those operational data stores now have data lakes and you want to apply the same containerized approach to data, advanced analytics and AI, that's where the opportunity arises, because now it's a disaggregated stack. And the disaggregated stack means that you have your storage outside of Kubernetes, but your containers needs the data. And that's where Alluxio comes in. And so Alluxio can be installed in the same container as your frameworks like Spark and Presto and TensorFlow or PyTorch. And you can create a container of combination of Alluxio and those. And then that can be scheduled with Kubernetes. That makes the data also elastic, just like your compute is elastic. And so by mounting the Alluxio inside and mounting the different storage that's on the outside, it provides data locality. And that's what's exciting about what we provide, and that's why we're here at the Kubernetes KubeCon.
Right. And if I'm not wrong, since it's an open source event, if I'm not wrong, Alluxio does a lot of open source also.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a bit about, what kind of open source projects either you're leveraging for Alluxio, at the same time, what are the projects that you are contributing back to?
Yeah. So I can start off with, recently we talked about some of the internals of Alluxio. It's a distributed system. It was originally developed out of the Berkeley Amp Lab, and the project was built cloud native. And so we recently adopted gRPC to do all the distributed system communication, which really upped our performance and was able to get us to building files of scale. And so that's some of the technologies of open source that we use under the hood. And with Alluxio itself, we have over 1,000 committers to the project. So we're really thankful for all the community involvement. And we're all Apache 2.0 licensed. We're part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, so we're a member there. And so we offer community editions of our software that's used widely across the world. And then on top of that, we have enterprise edition versions of the software too. That comes with technical support and some enterprise features, mainly around security.
So when you look at Kubernetes, scalability is one of the big
Yeah.
So what challenges are there when it comes to elasticity, or when people are scaling
Right.
their clusters and contain? Yeah.
Right. So typically, when you're thinking about the disaggregated stack, now you can scale your compute frameworks separately. So you could have, for example, 50 Presto nodes, and you want to then scale them out to 500. Well, to make the data available for those 500 is really challenging. So that's where Alluxio makes the data elastic and makes the data available to all those Presto workers at the same time. And this can be applied not only to a single cloud environment, but it can also apply to a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud environment. So we have customers that are doing ML workloads, and they find that they can run against data that's on-prem, but use the containers in the cloud. And this gives them 4x the level of performance that they were used to before.
What kind of customers you have? Who is using Alluxio?
Yeah, so we have all companies that have data-driven initiatives. They oftentimes look at using the cloud and also using Kubernetes for them. Okay, and across all industries, we have users using Alluxio. So, for example, Comcast is a major user, and they have a hybrid cloud environment. We have others. We just did a data orchestration summit. Walmart came to and gave the keynote. And that was a case where they're using it both on-prem and in the cloud to make the data much more available to their compute frameworks. And a third I'd mention is we have a user that is DBS, and DBS Bank, one of the biggest banks in Southeast Asia, and recently won the data transformation of the decade from Harvard Business Review, top 10. And we're really pleased to have them join us and talk about their use cases with Alluxio.
Right. Well, these are hardcore tech companies, and they can handle something as complicated as Kubernetes, but not everybody can. So how complicated or difficult it is to use Alluxio, or if it is, how do you make it easy for users?
Yeah, so we have a big focus on letting people get started very quickly, and especially if you're using a cloud environment. The cloud environment's a little bit more, you can use our cloud formation template, and we just announced using the Helm chart so that people can use that too. And so we have tutorials on our website, alluxio.io, and you can just start in 10 minutes running it in a cloud environment. And then you can choose to download it and install it wherever you want.
We are at the end of 2019. We'll soon be heading into 2020.
Yeah.
What are the trends, or what are the things that you would be walking into 2020
Yes.
from Alluxio's perspective?
So we think that analytics is going to be Kuberfied, or that it'll be really broadly used in Kubernetes environments. So far, it's been, I think, a workload that people haven't focused on yet. But I think that'll be a big part of it for 2020.
Steven, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me today and explaining more about data lake and what Alluxio is doing and the challenges the Kubernetes community faces when it comes to data lake. And I look forward to talking to you again at some point in future to better understand what you guys are doing there.
Great. Swapnil, thanks for having me, and we really love TFIR, so thanks very much.